Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, this episode is going to be amazing. We're going to be talking about how to start a healthy business inside and out with my new cousin, Monica. I met her on Alignable and we decided, hey, we need to have a show together. So this is going to be fun. Monica, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I am well. Thank you for having me.
It's truly my honor, and you're doing such amazing things on Alignable. I just want to give you a big shout out. First question right off the bat. Nobody's watching this, so don't get stressed out. First question is, what is your definition of resiliency?
I see resiliency as a return to set point. So I've gotten knocked down and I get right back up. And then the key is to learn from it, turn into that pain and say, okay, what do I need to do so that I don't get knocked down again? And that's when I become anti-fragile. So when I turn into the pain, I accept it, I become stronger, I become harder, I become better. That's when I reach a new point, I become anti-fragile. So resiliency is critical, but it's only the beginning. What's your definition of resiliency?
I'm a big. I love the Rocky series, and okay. I love when Rocky said, get knocked down 7 times, get back up 8. And for me, I'm just too dumb to quit, so I'll never quit. No matter what it is, I'm not going to quit until I'm dead. But you said anti-fragile. You said 3 times in that one sentence. Now I'm 60% blind, so I lost my vision about 6 years ago. But I can hear and I get people that use certain words, and I keep counting them because they must be important if they say them. So talk to us about what is anti-fragile.
Anti-fragile is a concept, and it's been around for a very long time. It's been encapsulated in some recent writing, but anti-fragile is the idea where adversity or difficulties literally make me stronger, that I am able to use a stress point. So if you're in a position, for example, to buy when everybody else is selling, okay, something, whether it's real estate, whether it's stocks, whether it's anything, and you see it as a viable investment, you have the cash, you're anti-fragile. The risk doesn't scare you. You're able to weather it, and you're able to take advantage of it and weather the storm. It's a statement of strength. Okay, so just like carbon, when exposed to oxygen and heat and maybe some other elements, becomes steel because it's exposed to the fire. When we're exposed to adversities and difficulties and challenges, if we embrace the challenges, learn from them, and let them change us to get better and stronger and to learn, we can then become stronger and we're capable of doing more.
And I love that. But in order to become resilient, to become anti-fragile, we have to recognize where we're at.
Right.
That's why I love Grant Cardone, his book. Only thing I got out of the book really was that you have to take self-accountability. Because once you realize that, like if you listen into the show, once you realize that I tell you that whatever happens from this point on in your life is your fault, or even if it's not your fault, how you react is your fault.
Yep.
Once you become accountable, that's when you become free. And you mentioned, we talked about that before we came on, with self-accountability. So talk to us, because most people in this world are not self-accountable. It's always somebody else's fault. It's somebody else's fault that I'm broke. It's somebody else's fault that I'm fat. It's always somebody else's fault. But once you realize it's my fault, now I can move on and become free. So talk about self-accountability.
Okay, so a couple of things. One of the things that I've loved about some of the training programs that I've done recently, and I shout out to iFit because I love their material, is that they'll talk about the idea that there's a 4-way construct. You start off with function. Does everything work properly? When you're injured, you go back to that stage and things need to heal. So if you go from function to health, where everything does work properly, to fitness, to performance. And it's a journey. And there are times when things happen, you'll get injured, things will be an issue, and maybe you even get sick and you can't work out for a while, so you may slip a little bit. Okay. So, but all of that takes accountability. Everybody wants to go automatically, let's say, whatever the goal is, let's say it's to run a marathon. They want to go straight to running the marathon. You can't do that. Everybody wants to climb to the top of Mount Everest. You can't go straight up. You have to go through the stages, and it takes as long as it takes. You have to put in the time and put in the effort. But you also have to be very clear, where am I? Okay. If something if my ankle is swollen and I can't run on it, I have to be aware of the fact that my ankle is swollen and I'm back in that function stage. And I have to get to the point of health before I can start working out on it again. And it's like that with everything. I think there's so much wisdom in the body. And I know we mentioned this before we started. If we learn from our physical fitness, our health, okay, and we learn these skills and how to navigate from that function to health to fitness to performance, we can learn skills that will work in other areas of life. So that's part of how I see how you do anything is how you'll do everything. So learning that construct has helped me. The other piece is that freedom is the flip side of responsibility. Susie Orman once defined responsible as response able. I am able to choose what I do from this day forward. And if something happens that I don't have control over, you're right, I have control over how I respond. And I look at people, and I even look at myself in the past, and I think, when I didn't take full ownership of it, I was subject to other people's control. I didn't have any control. I couldn't make things better. I'd rather take ownership of that which I can do today and get it done than feel helpless and be subject to not having it done and not having what I need. So there's a choice here. There's always a choice. It's where do I have agency today? What can I do today or in this moment to move my case just a little bit forward? So, are you a fan of Atomic Habits?
Oh, I love that book. I mention it pretty much every show. That is
Okay.
one of my favorite books of all time.
I love the description of the cycling team. Okay, where they did cumulative gains, small gains around the edges, resolving issues so that they could have improvement 1%, 3%, 5%. And it cumulatively built all the way out to the point where they were able to achieve their goals in terms of performance faster than anticipated. And I think if we all take that rule, it's like, okay, I can't fix the big issue now, but the big issue, winning the race, is built on a whole bunch of little issues. What can I do today to move forward? Whatever the issue is, where is your power? Where is your agency? What can you do today to move forward? What can you do tomorrow to move forward? And that's,
I agree. And one of our listeners even said that's what they learned from Atomic Habits.
yeah. Yep. I love that book. I love that construct. I love the idea of everything that he talks about with the habit stacking and all pieces of that. And I think that those are things that you can learn from one area and apply it across the board.
But also I believe that, by the way, you've mentioned, the saying that the way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
Correct.
One of my best friends, Daniel Gomez, had him on the show, and he told me that about 3 years ago. And that every time I do anything, that automatically clicks in my head. The way I do one thing is the way I do everything. So even if it's taking out the garbage, well, I'm going to be the best garbage taker out there is. If I'm going to clean my kitchen, it's going to be the cleanest it is, because the way I do everything, the way I do one thing is the way I do everything. And also I want to bring up another friend of mine. His name is Aaron Hale.
Mm-hmm.
He's blind and deaf. He runs 3 businesses, and he ran the Badwater 135 almost the same time as David Goggins did. And he's deaf and he's blind.
That's amazing.
So he's one of my he's one of my 5. So if I don't want to get up and go to the gym or go work out, I always think, well, what would Aaron do?
Yeah.
And how is it when he's going to ask me, Rich, did you work out today? And I'm going to be like, yeah, because of you. Because I don't have an excuse. If you're deaf and blind, and he's a podcaster that's deaf and blind, what is my excuse? So I think the power of the 5 is so important. What are your thoughts?
I think you're right. And it's funny, I had a similar moment. I was in Cleveland visiting family, and I got a 5-day pass at one of the local gyms, walked in there early one morning, bless you. And there was, the machine where you stand up and you lean against it, and you can then drop your legs. You have your arm braced, and you can do the crunches. Okay.
Yep.
And it's tough. It's a tough thing because you really have to work the abdomen. And that's been one of my goals. And I walked in there and I saw that machine and I thought, oh, I don't want to do that. And then I saw a woman who clearly looked like she was about 2 decades older than I am. She got up on that machine and she did it the hard way with her legs fully extended out. And I stood there and watched her do 30, stop, and do another set. And I thought, you know what? What is my excuse? I have no excuse. If I want to be in as good a shape as she is now, let alone 20 years from now, that's what I have to do. There's no reason why I can't do what I can do right now. And I'm with you. And it's funny that people don't remember this, but MLK Jr. at one point was speaking inside one of the churches. I have to find the link. And he talked about do everything you can with a commitment to excellence. He said, if you are a street sweeper, be the best damn street sweeper you can possibly be. And that is the line that runs through my head. There is no excuse. Do the best you can in the moment. Be the best that you can be at anything that you take on. But I also think, go ahead.
I love that. I actually love that. I think I read that speech for him. I think it was this week that I actually read that speech from him this week.
Okay, I need to go back and find that. But yeah, if you read that on the podcast, I need to go back and find it and find the link. But it's one of those things that people don't realize. It changes everything you do. Okay, be the best friend that you can be. Be the best parent that you can be. Be present in the moment. I have a mentor. He's been a mentor of mine for 2 decades. And when you work in finance, one of the things you do is you want to work with CPAs. And I've had several that have seen me as somebody that's been worthwhile to mentor. And one of them made the comment to me. He said, yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery. Okay. And I don't remember the last line. I keep forgetting it. But the ultimate is that's why we call today the present. We call them now the present. And it sticks with me. It's like, am I in the present? That's all I have. Tomorrow doesn't exist. It's an artificial contract. What can I do today to advance myself and advance my goals and become stronger, better? Excellence is a journey. It's not a destination. I had a physical fitness thing. There's an iFit climbing routine. I love the climbing. And we have in the gym that I go to, they have the treadmills that go up to a 40-degree incline, which is insane. The standard is 15. And it's really, really hard to do. And there was a routine that I would try it about once every few weeks. And I could never get through it start to finish all the way to the end because it was so hard. I could get through it, but I would have to decrease the incline or take a pause. And on Monday, that was the first time that I was able to get through it start to finish without a pause, without making the incline go down. Okay, without lowering the incline. And I did it. And I was so incredibly proud. In neurology, they talk about dopamine, but there's a difference between earned dopamine and unearned dopamine, okay, or easy dopamine. So what the neurologists have said is that when you do something hard, your dopamine resets, you have a dopamine surge, and it resets at a higher level so that you are more capable of taking on another hard task. You become stronger mentally in order to do that. Taking on hard tasks is critical so that you don't slide back. When you only do that, which is easy, your dopamine eventually starts to go down and you're less and less capable and less motivated. And that's part of what we have to deal with. We have to work with the neurological system, taking on that hard goal of, I'm going to make it through this routine. I'm going to get through this challenge. Okay. And finally hitting it on Monday. I will tell you, I took a snapshot picture of that screen and sent it to everybody I know saying, hey, I did it. I finally did it. And people were like, wow. But it was a big deal for me. And
Well,
go ahead.
Speaking about atomic habits, something he talks about is celebrating those small wins. In order to stack your habits, you have to celebrate the small wins. Like I had a small win the last 2 weeks. Was last week I was ranked right below Alex Hermosi on the podcast charts, and then this week I was ranked right below Ed Milet in the podcast charts. So for me, that's it's validation, but it's also that dopamine hit. Be like, okay, well, because I was ranked there, Joe Rogan's number 1 or number 2 now. How do I get there? But I got to celebrate the small wins with Ed Milet, Alex Hermosi, Tim Ferriss before I can get into the big leagues with Mrs. Kelsey and also with Joe Rogan. So I think you're right. I think you have to celebrate your wins.
And I think you do. And the celebration is important. But here's the thing, taking on the podcast the way you have, that's a hard challenge. And being there and doing it day in and day out and being present and creating what you create is a challenge. And it's not, you say it's a small win. I say that's a big win. Okay. Moving up with people who are as motivated and as dedicated as you are, and moving up those ladders, those are big wins. Those are not easy things to do. You did it. Celebrate it.
So let's talk about the power of proximity. Okay. Like this summer, I'm speaking on a Richard Branson stage. And the only reason I'm speaking on this stage is because 4 out of the 5 guests that he's speaking, I've had him come on my show. And now we're all friends. But if they weren't part of my circle, I would not be able to stand and sit and talk with Robert Kiyosaki, Sharon Lechter, Greg Reed, so and so on. But I believe in the power of proximity. Like I know, being a happily married man, married to my bride, if I'm hanging out with 5 guys that are going to the titty bars and going to get divorced, I'm going to be number 6.
Right.
But if I hang out with 5 guys that are focused on their family, focused on God, focused on their business, if they're 6 million, they're 5 millionaires, guess who's going to be number 6?
Right.
And I think it's because of the proximity. So talk about the power of proximity.
Okay. I really do believe in this, and I think your experience is very real. Okay. I believe that in order to actually achieve financial goals, if somebody does not come from a position where they grew up around people who were financially free, they have to shift the way they think, feel, and act, and they have to take on new habits across the board. So people who are financially successful, okay, and financially free, take care of their bodies to the best of their ability. Okay, take care of themselves and their relationships, including their spouses if they have them, their children if they have them. And they are also incredibly intentional about who they let into their world. The last couple of years, as I've moved in on this journey, I've had to restructure who I've allowed into my world, because I have to allow people into my world who reflect my values and that which I aspire to and are in their own way pursuing excellence. They're working on becoming the best person that they can be and doing and learning more. And when they're not, in a real sense, I can't afford them. I choose not to afford them. And the real reason for that is I'm going after things that are hard. I'm doing things that are hard. And I want to be around people who are going after real success.
I love you said the word hard, because I just had a conversation with somebody and I told them, pick your hard.
Right.
It's hard to grow a successful business. It's hard to be successful, but it's also hard to be broke, busted, and disgusted. Pick your hard.
Right.
Right?
Right. I am all about intentionality, and I am all about accountability. And the biofeedback loop exists. Okay. Now, I'm like you. I look at people and I will say, financial reality is, and financial literacy is at an all-time low. It's at about an 80% level that the population is financially illiterate. So only 20% of the people wandering around this country are technically financially literate and understand how to work within the system that we have. On top of all of that, about 70% of us are financially vulnerable. One large unforeseen bill and we're in significant trouble. Okay. So when you look at that, you say, all right, so let's say that's your reality. That's where you are now. You're in the function stage financially. What you do from today forward is not your fault, is your fault. What happened before, some of that may have been your fault, some of that may not have been your fault. What are you going to do today to become that much more knowledgeable, that much more capable, so that you can make decisions and change the way you think, feel, and act, so that you get from the function stage where things aren't working to the health stage where things are. And then once you get to the health stage, you can get to the fitness stage. Once you get to the fitness stage, you can get to the performance stage. But you're not going to move unless you take accountability in the here and now. There are so many people who are in this stage. I talk about this. My mother grew up with nothing. And my mother grew up on the wrong side of the tracks in Shaker Heights, Ohio. And she got her first job between second and third grade. I don't know how this happened, but somebody hired her to help out with different things within the school during second and third grade. And she did this so that she had money for school clothes and for school shoes. Her parents had the money for her brother, but did not have the money for her when she was little. And so she had to work to get to this point. She worked her tail off in school, wound up at Case Western Reserve, the two universities that formed Case Western. And what happened with this was amazing. She walked in and she was a math major. So at that time, as I understand it, you had to be invited in to a TA section to get extra help and to get tutoring and to get extra instruction. And none of the TAs accepted her in. At the end of freshman year, you had to take a placement exam, and that exam determined whether or not you were able to stay as a math major. The winner of the top score was published in the newspaper. And my mother woke up one morning to discover that she was the top scorer, despite the fact that she had had no help, despite the fact that she was in this private university as a scholarship student and working, and despite the fact that, you know, she was isolated to a large extent. And she met my father, married my father. But when my parents got divorced, my father had come from a financially successful family. That confidence, those skill sets left the room. So even though my mother wound up managing an accounting practice and then became a financial, did other things within finance and did very well, my mother had this lack of confidence. And to some degree, she, had this thing about trusting. She didn't know how to navigate the system. She knew how to balance a checkbook. She knew how to deal with taxes. She knew how to deal with certain corporate things. But in terms of investing, in terms of building things out, that wasn't her primary skill set. And she married my stepfather. They've done well. Okay. I'm very grateful for that. And she's built a lovely life. I mean, she's one of those second marriages. They've been successfully married for 37 years. Okay. It is proof that a second marriage can be successful. And the two of them have built out a nice life. But, she had a financial advisor at one point that I absolutely thought was just atrocious. Absolutely thought was atrocious. And it was because my mother didn't understand what she was looking at, and her anxiety from her childhood experiences got the better of her. Now, thank God my stepfather was in a better position and understood more and didn't have those same fears and was able to step in. But I look at this and I say to myself, it's not your fault you don't know how to navigate the system. But now that you understand you don't know how to navigate and you're in that function stage, what are you going to do about it? Where are you going to go to get the information? How are you going to address it? How can you do better until you know better? And that's the challenge. That's the challenge.
Well, I honestly think that this phone has leveled the playing field on a lot of stuff. I have 12 years ago when I started on this journey, my credit score was 412.
Good for you that you changed that.
My credit score is 835 now.
Congratulations.
I'm living in a house, but for me, I picked up a little purple book called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki and Sharon Lechter, and I got one whole shelf. It's just purple books. And also, I tell everybody, if you want to learn to start a business, you could easily just got Russell Brunson's whole book series for shipping for $10. You could have got his whole trilogy series on how to start and run a profitable business. Or you can get a college education for $15 a month on Audible. Because your brain doesn't know the difference if Tony Robbins is sitting next to you teaching you or on stage teaching you.
Right. But
here's where the information is and how to get that information.
Here's the difference. Here's the thing. A lot of people can learn the information, but the question is, how do you shift and change how you act? Very few people can take the information, read it, process it, and immediately go and do it. Okay? The fact that you did is a true credit to your capability to process and act on that information. For a lot of reasons, a lot of people seem to stay stuck. People know what they need to do to lose weight. Why is it that they don't? People know what they need to do to get fit. Why do they not do it?
Because it's hard.
Because it's hard. And there's all sorts of emotions that are getting in the way of them doing it. Now, when you're dealing with money, you're dealing with that ultimate tool. It's a tool. And because it's a tool and it has so much power, people are afraid of it. And so they don't necessarily know how to approach that and overcome that fear. So, for example, one of the weight loss programs that I love the most is Noom. And the reason why I love it is because they use cognitive psychology to give emotional support while people change the way they think and therefore shift how they feel on food, health, fitness. And it allows them that support, that emotional support, and changing the way they think and feel allows them to start acting in a way that they can start losing weight. So it's not the fast result, but it is the long-lasting result. It has a better long-term outcome than most of the other weight loss programs because you've actually had a mental shift. So what my program is and what I've been committed to building for several years has been a financial version of that. You can get all those information books, you can get all that book and all those books in education. But if you, for some people, for a lot of people, without the emotional support, without the coaching support, without the informational, how does this apply? What does this look like? They can't actually implement it. They can't overcome themselves. So there's a book out there that I'm listening to now on Audible called The Mountain Is Me. Okay. Yep. Mountain is you. Yep. I love this book because it talks about the fact that we get in our own way. And I've been working on a book for a long time, and it's basically get out of your own way. It's about all the times I've seen people who make a tremendous amount of money, but fail to make that shift where they take their income and convert it into wealth that will pay them. They don't understand that financial freedom requires wealth that is actually paying them as opposed to income that they're just earning.
Yeah. And like I was, when I was selling timeshares, I was actually playing poker with the owner of the largest timeshare company in the world. And I said, I'm like, what's the difference between you and the server that's sitting here picking up your drinks? He's like, it's their vocabulary. And he said, not only that, he said, I've had hundreds of thousands of people come up to me and ask me for jobs. I have yet to have somebody come up to me and ask me how I did it. And for me, I realize that if I want to be the best podcaster that I can be, I have to look and see, well, what is Joe Rogan doing? What is Ed Milet, Tim Ferriss, Gary Vaynerchuk? What are they doing that's working? How can I add it into my repertoire so I can get on their level? And I think a lot of people are just afraid to, if they have a rich uncle, to say, I don't want a job. I'll work for free. Just show me how you did it and teach me how you became successful. And I think a lot of people are not humble to ask for help.
Yeah, that's the problem. I think it's, again, that ego that gets in the way. And, once you realize that the problem is you, the question then falls right back on you. You have the power to change you. You're the only one that does. I can't change you. You can't change me. Okay. The only person that can change me is me. So if I want a better outcome, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result? Okay. So if I want a different result, I have to change me. And that's painful. Okay. But it has to happen. And then the other problem is, and I'll say this, my industry has failed in a real way. You have a lot of advisors out there, people calling themselves advisors. Some of them have the right credentials, some of them don't. But the other problem is that people don't know. So they connect with somebody that they know, like, and trust, but they don't know enough about finance, and they're scared, so that they look for the wrong cues to make a decision. Like, my mother was like, oh, you need to have the nice office with the marble and, the whole setup. People need to kick the tires. Well, maybe that worked in the 80s. Maybe that worked in the 90s and the, 2000s. But really, when you think about that, your fees are paying for that. And I've seen people in great offices who were not quite as capable. I've seen great people in every firm, and I've seen a lot of mediocrities, and then I've seen a lot of people who are just awful. It's a little bit skewed. And when I first started out in financial advisory, I saw the people who came to me because there was a problem with where they were. If you have money and you've had a financial advisor and you're looking for a new one, it's usually been because something has gone wrong. And so that's what I was dealing with. And I saw various and assorted things, and people didn't understand things were wrong until it was too late. So the question is, how do you stand back and say, okay, maybe I don't know enough. Where can I go to get the information? How do I implement it? Am I going to need support to implement this, or am I going to give up because it's hard? It's hard to look yourself in the mirror and realize you're the source of the issue.
Well, for me, I'm a different kind of guy. I'm a different kind of dude, and I know it. Like, I have a lot of people that reach out to me, let me be your financial advisor. And then we meet. And then I ask them, okay, let me see your financial stocks. Well, let me see your personal portfolio. Wait, I can't do that. Wait, so you want me to invest in something that you're not even invested in? Like, for me, when I went to buy my brand new Kia, I had my credit score in hand. I had how much I wanted to pay. I walked in there. I'm like, okay, I want black on black. This is what I want. This is what I can pay. Here's my credit score. Don't run my credit. I already know what it is. And the guy says, okay, let's write it up. And I said, well, hold on. Let me see your car keys. What are you driving? Oh, you're driving a Ford? Nah, you're not going to sell me a Kia. Next. I went through six salespeople before one of them actually owned a Kia. And that's the one I bought it from. Because I believe that some brokers are brokered than you. That's why they call them brokers.
Well, and here's the problem. I understand what you're saying. Okay. And let me shift this a little bit. So different clients have different risk tolerances. Yeah. And your risk tolerance, okay. And so when I talk to people about knowing risk, psychologists will say your tolerance for risk is pretty much established by the time you're 6. In finance, that's not true. Okay. So when you have a client who's, let's say, their spouse has died, their tolerance for risk is probably going to be a lot lower. Okay. Yeah. When you have there are different things that will happen in life, and a really good financial advisor is going to talk to you, not just because they want to connect with you, but because they're looking for clues that maybe something has shifted and we may need to look at saying maybe they can take on more risk or maybe they can't. Okay, maybe we need to take some risk off the table. So I look at it this way: every account has a goal. All right, this is an easy way to start thinking about your investing. Every account has a goal. Every goal has a risk tolerance and a time horizon. And there's two parts to time horizon: time in the goal and time to the goal, and then time in the goal. So for example, if I'm looking for, let's say I've got a young person and they're saving up to buy a house, their first house. So the question is, okay, how quickly do they want to get it done? So let's say they're 22 and they want to get it done by 30. Okay, that means it's 8 years out. Then the question is, how do they handle risk? But once we get to the point where they buy the house and the deposit is made, that goal ends. Okay, but retirement is different. Retirement is, and I think of that as when every day is Saturday and work is optional. So let's say you want to retire, name the age. I've got a plan for you as a financial planner, and I'm a CFP. I have to plan for you to hit 95, maybe 100 years old. Now, if you tell me, hey, people don't live very long in my life, that's great. But if you run out of money, what are we going to do? Okay. Now, if you tell me that somebody is sick, that changes the equation. So it's a give and take, and it shifts. So I have people who are extremely risk tolerant, have a very high degree of risk tolerance, and therefore certain investments make sense for them. I have people who are not risk tolerant, and those investments don't make sense. I have people who are qualified investors who can do certain things that other people, and invest in certain products and certain investments that other people cannot do. So I understand what you're doing. It's just there's a mixture. There's always a mixture, and there's always a way of doing this. Now, let's put it this way. I would never recommend something to you that I wouldn't, if it was appropriate for my risk, my needs, and my goals, that I wouldn't do for myself. How does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, so then let me ask you, because I have my own opinion on it, but I love talking to financial experts on it. A young couple comes up to you, and they're looking to buy a house. In your professional opinion, is your house an asset or is it a liability?
Okay, so are you looking to buy a house to live in, or are you looking to buy a house as an investment? Are you going to live in it, or are you going to rent it out to other people?
Well, the reason why is because I had somebody there that I was talking to earlier today. They asked me, because they knew I was going to have you on. They said, well, ask her if we're 38 years old. We have enough money to buy a house or a duplex, and we don't know what would be best for us to do, to buy for the investment part, or to buy just for something to live in, or both.
Okay, so here's the thing, and here's part of this. One, I'm a fiduciary because I'm in an RIA. Okay, so it's a registered investment advisory firm. I have to act as fiduciaries. As a CFP, I'm a fiduciary whether you're my client or not. So I'm not dodging the question, but I'm saying I would need to talk to them about their risk tolerance. I would need to talk to them about their experience with managing property. Okay, because if they're buying the duplex, they're going to have to manage that house for the renter. Okay, I'm also going to have to ask them, what are the conditions under which they're going to be buying it as an investment? So it's not a simple answer. But when I look at my house, for example, I don't see my house for me as an investment. It's a liability, but I need a roof over my head. So I tell people that the primary home, under most circumstances, I want them to see that they need a place to live. Don't use that as a way of making money. Okay? Or don't think of it that way. Think of it as an obligation because you need to have a roof over your head. But when it comes to making those decisions on that specific case, I would want to talk to them and walk them through it. I have clients who have extensive real estate investments, okay, and they are fully aware of the financial consequences and the obligations that they have to go through to manage the property. And they are experienced real estate investors, and it works. But I also have other people who say, you know what, I don't want to manage that. And I don't know how that, again, there is no hard and fast answer. It's a dialogue and a conversation. So I hope you don't feel like I've cheated on that, but that's really the way I approach it.
Well, and one of the reasons, like when we bought our house 15 years ago, we bought it for $3. Now it's worth $7.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we paid over $100. So now we have like $500,000 in equity, to where now if I want to start another business or to do something different, I have that I can get a HELOC just to start another business. So for me, it's sometimes I think of it as an asset, and then sometimes it's a liability. Like when you got to put a new roof on, it kind of becomes a liability. So,
yeah, I've had to do that a couple of times.
So I think it's a little bit of both. It all depends on the situation.
Right, and that's the whole piece of this. Again, navigating this is all about learning the skills so that you feel like you can make the decisions. But it's also about finding your team. So one of the things that I will talk to people about in the program that we're doing, where it's not advisory, it's actually empowerment. Okay. It's that Wealth Academy. The idea is to help people develop the skills and the confidence so that not only can they engage in these conversations and figure out what works with them, but they can also figure out the people that work for them. So I might be the right advisor for this other person, but I may not be the right advisor for you, or vice versa. Okay. You need to feel like you're in control. I want you and every other person that I deal with to be the CEO of their own financial destiny. And that means being able to hire the different people that they're going to work with and work with them effectively. And that requires skills and confidence. But that's what being financially free really requires. And my goal is to actually see that power and that level of confidence in the hands of more people. I'd like to be part of the solution to the financial vulnerability and the financial illiteracy, as opposed to just standing back and watching it happen. I saw too many people with sky high incomes during the shutdown, really in a panic. And really making decisions where they got in their own way and they were blowing themselves up financially.
And I actually have one of my best friends, he had a GNC, and then all of a sudden he decided, okay, we're going to build 2 more, and then we're going to build a gym. And then COVID hit, and then the market, everything shut down for 2 years. So you can't go to a gym. Everybody started buying online, and now all of a sudden, you're out. And you go from having this, you're living large, to all of a sudden you're barely squeaking by because you made some decisions. You got too greedy and you got caught,
Right. And like when we talk about financial planning for an individual, you have the emergency fund and you have the debt control, and where you're resolving that and removing that. Okay. Businesses also require their own financial planning. They are their own entity, and they need their own accounts, and they need their own emergency funds, and they need their own insurances. So that's a way of approaching it. It is its own entity. It's not a person, but it is its own entity, and it needs its own planning. And a lot of people mesh the two. So I understand and I'm sympathetic, but again, that's something that I'd like to be a part of addressing. So one of the things that's on the list of things that will happen in 2025 is we will do a business financial advisory workshop for people where they can come in and spend 2 days literally walking through how to structure things and how to deal with them. Okay. How to understand the taxes and how to deal with that and how that flows into your tax, but understanding that and walking through that. It is a different way of thinking about it.
Well, and like my business coach, Joe Nicasio, I had this podcast for 10 years and I wasn't making any money, $0. Now we're doing well. we're a C corp right now, so we're actually a corporation where
Mm-hmm.
somebody wants to sue me. Okay, you sue the corporation. I'm good because you can't take anything from me. You can sue the corporation all you want, but he actually had to sit down and be like, okay, this is what you need to do. This is why you need to do it. You may have an LLC, but then it's still a lot that you can get caught up in. And I think sometimes, like even like when I had Sharon Lecter and Robert Kiyosaki come on, sometimes I'd rather pay more money for a lawyer in the front end than having to pay in the back end, or pay for a financial advisor in the front end and then not having to pay for it in the back end. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people, what you thinking? Oh, I got to hire a professional. Well, yeah, it's worth hiring them now until you need them then. Because it's gonna be a lot more expensive if you need them then going into court. It's gonna be a lot more expensive. Right?
Yes, and it's sort of like one of those things. I hate telling clients that they need to spend money. I really do. Okay, but it's one of those things where it's like, hey, I need you to go talk to an attorney and get this resolved. You haven't updated your will since 1987, that needs to be addressed. You don't have a power of attorney, that needs to be addressed. You've got a corporate issue. Oh, you're doing business under a DBA, but you have one LLC, but it's not connected to this current business. You need to address that. Okay. You need to set up some systems here that protect you. And as a financial advisor, I'm an issue spotter. I can say, look, I can't address this, but I'd like for you to talk to somebody who can. And even if they tell you that it's not a big issue, okay, maybe they can tell you how much of an issue it is and what it will take and what your options are. And I may have a good sense of where that's going, but I need for them to talk to the expert to give them that guidance. Okay. And to hear that. And sometimes people don't want to hear that. It's like, no, I'm concerned about this. Maybe this is an issue. Maybe this isn't. Please speak to your attorney. If you don't have an attorney, here's a list of 3. Please make a phone call. Okay. Set up an appointment, get an initial consultation. It may cost you a few $100s. At least figure out how much of an issue this is and how much risk you're carrying this way. And
so, for the last 20 minutes, I want to talk about, personal finance is very personal.
Yes, it is.
It's kind of like when I grew up, I didn't know that you can write bad checks until I wrote one.
Oh, wow.
And I got locked up for it because my money, my parents was like, they kept it in between themselves. And they always just said, well, we can't afford it. So, but I had no financial literacy until I picked up the Purple Book. And then until I took Dave Ramsey's course, Financial Peace University, I had no upbringing and about personal finance. So talk about how a lot of people don't talk about finances because it was never talked about in front of them as children.
So when my kids were in middle school, we were in Arizona and they were in a charter school, and the head of the charter school and I were talking about things. And she asked me to come in and teach a program for the kids. And I developed what I called economic and financial reality. And the first class, I sat there and I said, all right. And we talked a little bit about something academic for about 5 minutes. And then I said, okay. And we had this large, enormous room, ceiling to floor whiteboards across an entire wall. And there were about 50 kids in the room. And I said to the kids, tell me what you want in your lives. And I started writing. I wrote down everything they said. Now, the young men in there stereotypically had a list of wants, but they were pretty normal. The girls could tell me the jewelry, the houses, the aircraft, the boats, okay, the yachts, okay. They could tell me the clothes. They could tell me everything in great detail. The travel, name it, they had it. Some of them actually had artwork. They were able, and we covered the wall. So after we had this conversation, after they told me this, I turned to the kids and said, tell me how you're going to pay for it. Dead silence. Dead silence. And after about 45 seconds, maybe, is the popular girl who was sitting in the front of the room next to the popular kid, and they were super cute together. And she turned and said, I'm going to marry someone who's going to buy it for me. And that young man bless his heart, shifted his entire body away from her as he shifted the chair and the desk away and said, good luck with that. And that became a conversation with these kids that they told me afterwards no one had ever had with them. We talked about, one girl said she wanted to go to UC San Diego to become a marine biologist. I asked her, okay, tell me about that. She said, well, it's going to take her 5 or 6 years to get her master's. I said, what can you do with it? She didn't know. I said, who hires a marine biologist? She didn't know. I said, how much will you earn? She didn't know. I said, how much does it cost for UC San Diego? At the time, it was around $55,000 per year. I said, so you're going to spend a minimum, you're going to spend close to $300,000, if not more, on a degree. You don't know how much you're going to earn for it. You don't know who you're going to work for or what that work is going to look like. I said, I'm all for you going for an education if it makes sense for you to build your life. No one spoke to her about that. And we had a conversation. Flash forward to the next class. I walked in there and I saw there were these frappuccinos on the desk. And they had this, several of the girls had frappuccinos on there. And I turned to the kids and I said, okay, how much was that frappuccino? And I think around that time it was about $4. Great. Did you earn the money to pay for that frappuccino yourself, or was that money given to you? And for every single kid that had one, it was given to them. They didn't earn it. I knew there were some other kids who had some babysitting jobs and other things in the program. They were not the ones who bought the Starbucks drink. So I turned to them, and by the way, I'm a Starbucks fan. And I turned to them and said, okay, how much did your parents have to earn to give you the money to buy that $4 drink? And they said, $4. I said, no, that's not the way this works. When you work, you're going to have federal taxes, and this was in Arizona. You're going to have state taxes. You might have local taxes. You're going to have sales taxes. So let's figure out how much your parents had to earn just to pay for that. I said, and let's also think about the fact that you need to have, is this a want or a need? And they said, it's a want. I said, okay, what are the needs? And they turned to me and I said, how much does it cost for your home? How much does it cost for the utilities, the water, the power? How much does it cost for your food, your transportation? All of that. All of that comes before your Starbucks Frappuccino. And the kids were blown away. That was not what I intended to talk about that time, but it was a thought exercise that took up most of that class, and they were blown away. And the feedback from the parents was thanking me for actually doing this and thanking the school for letting me teach this class, because the parents didn't know how to talk about it to their own kids. They were embarrassed. They felt like they didn't know how to talk about it to their kids. They felt like they were vulnerable, some of them, and they just couldn't pour from an empty pitcher. Okay. They didn't have anything in their own cup to give. And so that's when I realized that this is literally a 4 to 5 generation problem. That what I grew up with as a child was not unusual. Okay. And it's not anybody's fault. The question is, what do you do about it? And so that's part of the problem. And I know there are some different programs that people can go to, and there are limitations with them. And I'm glad you found what you needed to step forward into your power. And I want people to do that. And if Dave Ramsey works for you, go do Dave Ramsey. But there are other people and there are other things that you do need to learn. And so that's part of the whole dynamic that we have going on here. You know, there's a lot, for example, there's a lot of vulnerability that's going on. And one of the things I'll say to people is, what would happen if you couldn't work tomorrow? If something happened and you couldn't work? I said, where would you be? How long would you be able to survive? And they're like, oh, well, you know, sometimes they'll say I have an emergency fund and it'll last me 3 months or 6 months. I said, okay. I have had situations where I saw one girl was 26 when she was first sent to me. She had a full-time job and a second part-time side hustle as a trainer. So physically fit, but she got into a car accident, underinsured motorist, didn't have enough insurance on her own, and she wasn't able to work for 2 years. And so while she was getting healthy, She had to go back to her family, who, by the way, were not really supportive of this because she didn't have enough money to make it through those 2 years. So one of the first things I'll say to people is, if you have a job working for somebody else, let's say you're building out your business and you still have a job while you're building out your business, and your employer offers disability insurance and it's group disability, you buy it. That's the first benefit you get. Why? Because if something happens through no fault of your own and you're unable to work, your income is replaced on an after-tax basis if it's done correctly. And 70% of us will have a disability event at some point in our lives. I've seen, yep. And it's a very simple thing. And it's something that, most financial advisors don't talk about this with their clients or with their clients' children, but it's very simple. Okay. I'm not selling it to you. I'm saying use your benefits through work if it's there and go do it. Why?
And when you talk to people, I mean, unfortunately, wisdom comes with age. I'm going to be 56 at the end of the month. But when I talk to people, I let them know you're trading time for money.
Exactly.
That's what we're doing. We're trading your minutes. Like you said, it was a $4 whatever it was, coffee. How many minutes did it take for your parents to have to work for that $4?
Right.
Because all we're doing is trading time for money. And I think that's one good thing about what I do, writing books. I got evergreen products, so I can make money even while I'm sleeping. But a lot of people, I tell them, if you want to start becoming financially, successful, take on a side hustle, take on a side gig, learn how to be a business, learn how to, even if it's Uber, if it's whatever it is, take on a side hustle so you can learn business and you can learn how to stop trading time for money.
I agree with that. But the other thing that I see is that people, when they make more money, spend. So their spending goes up and increases. And so what I want people to do, and I am 100% with you, I want you to take on that side hustle. I want you to become super intelligent and super intentional and think about, okay, is this a want or a need? And how long, what is this really costing me in opportunity cost? What else could I be doing with that money that builds out my freedom to get me out of the time for money hustle and back into my own, where I'm building my wealth? I had 2 referrals when I first started at Merrill Lynch. One of them was a doctor who had been disabled. Okay. And even though he had made a tremendous amount of money per year, very high base salary plus bonus, when he had a stroke in his late 40s, had very little in terms of assets. So it was a major lifestyle shift, but thank God he had disability insurance paying his bills. I had another couple that came to me, middle class. They lived off one income, invested the other from day one. The only debt they took on was their home. Okay. They had a daughter who was disabled. He sold his 4 dry cleaning businesses and turned around and went to work for somebody else managing their business. And they still lived the same way. They didn't care. They weren't buying to impress. They didn't care about any of that. When they became my client, millions rolled over. So people need to understand it's about intentionality. It's about choice. And as the income goes up, that's great. We need to see that. It makes life easier. Use that money to create wealth.
So then how do we get into your ecosystem? How do we get in touch with you if we want to work with you? Or even if we have, if we want to have you come teach, like you said, you taught a classroom, how do we get in your ecosystem?
Okay, the best way to find me, send me an email, mkaufman@harmonyam.com. I'll put it up in the chat, or you can put it in the link.
I'll put it in the show notes.
And then the other thing is, there's 2 websites. It's www.harmonyam.com, which is Harmony Asset Management. I'm Director of Financial Planning. You can reach me through there, or you can reach me through www.harmonywealthacademy.com. I am also running a free program on once a month. We're doing accountability and goal setting, general, not financial, but general. and I'm doing it through Zoom. If you send me the email, I'll send you the link and you can sign up for that. I'm doing it for adults on the first Friday of every month. And I'm doing it for what I call the launcher crowd, the young adults, 17, 18 years old, up to about maybe just before they turn 30. And this is for them because so many of them do not know how to set goals and how to achieve goals. And so it's a supportive environment where we're going to talk about goal setting. It's the 12-week year combined with a bunch of different techniques from cognitive psychology that I find helpful. So that is really a way to start with my ecosystem, where we'll talk about base level, how to think in terms of achieving and how to set yourself up for success.
I love it. And also, you guys, you can find her on Alignable. That's the way I found her. So she's on Alignable. So make sure if you're on Alignable, make sure you check her out. Thank you, Alignable. I appreciate you. Monica, thank you so much for coming on. I think I learned something new that I'm going to apply to my business. So I just want to say thank you for coming on. And guys, as you know, the way I end my show all the time is I love Joel Osteen, and I love something that he says is every morning that you wake up, you have a choice to be a victim or to be the victor. And if you guys show up every week on my show, you are no longer victims of your past. You're victors of your present and your future. Congratulations.
I love that. And I've loved being here. And I love you, cousin. And I'm so grateful I found you.
Well, have a great week and have an amazing week. And guys, remember, vertical momentum. The only way to go is up. I love you guys. I will see you next week.
Thank you, sir.